This is The Lone Man on the Ridge, Episode 13, The Checkpoint. The concrete barriers were Jersey walls that were arranged in a staggered pattern that forced any vehicle into a slow S-curve. Two trucks parked nose to nose behind the barriers, blocking the full width of the highway, men standing at intervals, armed and not hiding it. Mr. Rogers stiffened beside Jack on the bench seat. The dog's body went rigid against Jack's thigh, ears flat, a low sound rising in his throat. Not quite a growl yet. Something between alert and dread. The woman was pressed against the passenger door, the child on her lap. There was nowhere else for anyone to be. The cab was a tight space full of breath and tension. "Easy," Jack said. That was for everyone, not just Mr. Rogers. "What is it?" the woman asked. "It's a checkpoint." "Are they?" "I don't know yet," Jack said. Jack slowed the truck to a crawl, 20 miles an hour, then 15, then 10. He studied the setup as it grew through the windshield. The barriers were clean, no graffiti, no junk piled against them. The men wore matching gear, not identical, but coordinated. Earth tones, plate carriers, rifles slung across chests, not pointed, definitely showed discipline. There was a pattern here. Shifts, positions, fields of fire that overlapped without crowding. Someone had set this up and knew what they were doing. "They're organized," Jack said quietly. Mr. Rogers shifted, pressing harder into Jack's leg. Jack put his hand on the dog's neck without looking. "You sit, boy. Stay quiet. I mean it." The dog settled down, just a little bit. Jack rolled the truck into the S-curve and stopped where a man with a hand raised told him to stop. Two men approached, one to each side of the truck. Standard traffic stop positioning. Jack noticed that immediately. The one on the driver's side was maybe 30, clean-shaven, eyes sharp but not hostile. He carried an AR with a red dot optic and kept it pointed at the ground. "Afternoon. Kill the engine, please. Hands where I can see them." Jack complied, hands off the wheel, engine off. "How many in the vehicle?" 3. Me, the woman, a child, and a dog. "Weapons?" Jack did not hesitate. Hesitation was what got you shot at checkpoints. Glock on my hip, Remington 870 behind the seat, scope 308 in the bed, along with 4 ARs with loaded mags. The man's eyebrows went up slightly. 4 ARs got a reaction, but he recovered quickly. "We're going to need everyone out of the vehicle. We'll search it. Standard procedure. Nobody's taking anything. We just need to see what's rolling through here." Jack looked around for a moment, held the man's gaze. No malice, no threat, just a boundary being stated. "All right, fine," Jack said. Jack stepped out slowly, told the woman to do the same. She climbed out with the child on her hip, standing close to Jack like proximity was some sort of protection for her. Mr. Rogers came out on Jack's side. Jack kept a hand on the dog's collar. The dog's body was vibrating with the effort of having to stay still. They stood to the side while 2 other men donned gloves and methodically went through everything. Every tote was opened, every item was examined and set on the tailgate. The Remington, the 308, and the 4 ARs laid out in a row, ammo being counted as well. Even the chicken crate got a look. One of the men glanced at the chickens and then at the eggs sitting in the straw beneath them. "Live chickens?" "Eggs," Jack said. The man shrugged and moved on. It took 15 minutes. When they were done, everything was back in the totes, not haphazardly, but placed. It was organized the same way before it came out, the way a professional leaves a space after working in it. Jack made another mental note. The job site trailer sat 30 yards off onto the shoulder. Beige, clean, a small generator humming beside it, properly ventilated, an antenna on the roof, not improvised, but professionally mounted. Jack had been watching the trailer since they pulled up. The door then opened. The man who stepped out was maybe in his mid-50s. Medium build, medium height, nothing remarkable about his frame. But the way he moved said everything. Unhurried, precise, the kind of economy of motion that you only develop when you've spent decades being watched by people who report to you. Press BDUs, woodland pattern, faded but immaculate. Creased, boots laced tight, pants bloused into the tops with the kind of precision that said habit, not effort. A sidearm on his thigh in a retention holster. No rifle because he didn't need one. He didn't come to Jack. He walked to a position about 20 feet away, close enough to hear, but far enough to observe. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back and watched the guards finish their report. One of the guards walked over and spoke to him quietly, a subordinate briefing a commander. The man nodded once, his eyes then moved to Jack. Not aggressively, not warm either, just assessing Jack. He stayed where he was. Jack recognized the move. Let the other person come to you. Let them cross the distance. Small thing, but it establishes who holds the ground. Jack didn't move either. For a long moment, neither of them did. Eventually the man walked over, not to Jack, but to the tailgate. He looked at the 4 rifles laid out in a row. His hands hovered over one, then moved to another. He tilted it, looked at something on the lower receiver. He noticed some markings. Then he checked the second one. He straightened up and looked at Jack with something new in his eyes. He was interested. Are these from Johnson City? It wasn't a question, and Jack didn't treat it like one. They are? The man then studied him for a moment longer, then extended a hand. Colonel Driscoll. I run this stretch, 80 miles on I-81 all the way up to Roanoke. Jack shook his hand, firm and brief. I'm Jack. Driscoll turned back to the rifles. I know the crew that runs that checkpoint down there. Undisciplined, cruel for cruel's sake. He then looked at Jack. You kill any of them? Jack held the man's gaze for 5 long seconds. No. Driscoll's mouth twitched, the faintest expression, a little disappointment dressed up as amusement. Pity, he said. He let the word hang for a moment, then moved on businesslike. My men tell me that you're running on fumes. Driscoll then gestured to the ARs. I'll give you 10 gallon for 2 of these. My pick. Jack looked at the 4 rifles. He'd carried them out of Johnson City with blood still drying on the highway, dead weight, surplus, but giving up choice, letting Driscoll select, meant losing the best of the lot. Jack thought to himself, 10 gallons, 250, 300 miles maybe. Not sure if that was enough to reach Stephen. 15 gallons and you take your pick. Driscoll glanced back over at Jack. I'm sorry, we're not negotiating here. 10 gallons, 2 ARs, my pick. Jack kept his eyes locked on Driscoll. Fine. 10 gallons, take your pick. Driscoll didn't hesitate. He pointed to the 2 with the cleanest furniture and the newest optics. His men collected them along with their magazines. A guard walked to a cargo container behind the trailer and came back with 2 empty 5-gallon jerry cans. Another guard began to fill the jerry cans from a large drum. Jack could hear the fuel splashing inside. They loaded the 2 jerry cans into his truck and removed the 2 empty jerry cans that Jack had. One of the guards reached into the chicken crate and pulled out 3 eggs from the straw. He looked at Driscoll. Driscoll then looked at Jack. Call it a road tax. Jack said nothing. The eggs then disappeared into the guard's jacket. Driscoll looked at Mr. Rogers. The dog was still pressed against Jack's leg, ears flat, watching Driscoll with the kind of focus that said he had already decided what to do if things went sideways. That's a hell of a dog you got there, Driscoll said. He is. Is he trained? Trained enough. Driscoll nodded slowly. He clasped his hands behind his back again, rocked slightly on his heels, the posture of a man who was about to make a proposal. I've got 43 people here under my care and a perimeter that's too big for eyes alone. A dog like that would be useful. He looked from Mr. Rogers to the woman and child standing about 5 feet from Jack. Tell you what, I'll give you a choice. The dog or the woman and the kid. The woman's head snapped towards Jack. Jack did not look at her, did not blink, did not hesitate. Take the woman and child. The words came out flat, immediate, the way a man speaks when the answer was never in question. Driscoll stared at Jack. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Then Driscoll laughed, not a chuckle, but a real laugh. Head back, genuine belly laugh, the kind that came from somewhere deep. His men looked at each other, not sure what to do with it. Good, good, Driscoll said, still laughing. He pointed at Jack. That's good. That's the right answer. He shook his head, grinning. Most men would hesitate. You didn't even have to think about it. Nothing to think about, Jack said. Driscoll's smile then faded into something quieter, more like recognition. One serious man acknowledging another. Your dog's safe. I would never take your dog. I just wanted to know a little more information about who I was letting through. Then Driscoll stepped closer to Jack, moved into Jack's space, close enough that Jack could smell the coffee on his breath. Real coffee, not instant. His voice dropped low. Don't mistake my relatively calm demeanor for kindness. His eyes held Jack's. There was no smile. There was no pleasantry behind his eyes. My dad was a retired cop. I know what you are, and I know what's behind those eyes. He held the look for one more beat. I respect it, but this is my road, and the next man who rolls through here with 4 rifles and an attitude might not get the same courtesy. Jack did not flinch, did not step back, merely held his ground. Driscoll held it too. Then something shifted. The tension released like a breath he had held too long. He stepped back and straightened up. Roanoke. He said it like a warning and a weather report at the same time. Past the city line, that's not my territory. Gangs, rogue military, what's left of a National Guard that stopped answering anyone about 3 weeks in. They've carved the whole city up. He looked at the truck, at the woman, then at the child. You got people in that city too. You might want to find a way around if you can. Jack nodded once. Copy that, Colonel. Jack did not say thank you. Driscoll noticed. The faintest smile touched the corner of his mouth. He turned and walked back towards the trailer. His boots crunched on the gravel in an even cadence. He didn't look back. The trailer door closed behind him. Jack loaded everything and everyone into the truck without rushing. The woman climbed in first, pulled the child into her lap, pressed herself against the passenger door. She did not look at Jack. Mr. Rogers jumped up on the bench seat and settled between them. A buffer. Jack climbed in, started the engine, put it in gear. He drove through the exit lane at exactly the same speed they expected him to. Not fast, not slow, just a man leaving, not fleeing. He did not look into the mirror until he was at least 1 mile north of the checkpoint. At that point, the checkpoint was just a smudge in the distance and getting smaller every second. The cab was quiet. The child had fallen asleep against her mother's chest. The woman stared out the passenger window at nothing. She hadn't said a word since the checkpoint. Jack knew why. He didn't explain, didn't justify, didn't say it was a test, or that he had already known what the answer was, or that he never would have actually. He didn't say anything. About 5 miles north of the checkpoint, Jack pulled over at an old rest area, overgrown, empty, no vehicles, no people. He left the engine running and stepped out. The 2 jerry cans were right where Driscoll's men had loaded them, wedged between the totes and the chicken crate. Jack lifted the first one, unscrewed his gas cap, and poured. The fuel glugged in steadily. The smell of gasoline rose in the warm air. He emptied both cans, 10 gallons. The needle was still just under half a tank. Jack sent the empty jerry cans back into the bed, screwed on the gas cap, and stood there for a moment with his hands on the side of the truck looking north. Jack had no idea what they were going to do when they got near Roanoke. He got back into the truck. Mr. Rogers pushed his head into Jack's thigh. His tail wagged once, then twice. Jack put a hand on the dog's head. The woman was still looking out the passenger window. He put the truck in gear and pulled onto I-81 North. 35 miles per hour, conserving as much fuel as he could. This has been The Lone Man on the Ridge, Episode 13, The Checkpoint.